Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. Looking behind me, I hope it's obvious. I thoroughly love to read. Though not every novel is a flawless masterpiece. In fact, every book is flawed in some way, be it minor plot holes, not fully realizing its characters, or creating moments that outright insult the reader's intelligence. Today, I'm going through the greatest writing sins that I've come across. Some of these put me to sleep, some of them made me want to throw the book across the room, and some of them made me close the book, at least for a little while. I strive to be cognizant of these sins while I write so that I don't include them. Then again, I know I've probably missed a bunch. These are my 5 greatest writing sins in novels I've read and works I've written. Number 1. Making direct references to more famous works. Characters can absolutely have a favorite song or a favorite real-world novel. I'm completely fine with that to give them some kind of anchor in the real world. However, when the characters, settings, or themes directly reference a more famous work, it feels unimaginative. Worse, the novel can feel like it's clinging to the legs of a more popular story to elevate itself. When characters are dropped from the real world into a fantasy realm, their first response should never be, well, this is just like Lord of the Rings. Likewise, when a character waves around a wand to shoot a fireball, they shouldn't comment about how it's about to get Harry Potter up in here. Namely because across the Harry Potter series, no one cast a fireball like how that particular story portrayed. A few years back, there was a controversy at the Great North Marathon in England. A particular runner had used the bus to shave off a portion of the run. Like a bad comedy sketch, he tried to get away with it using glasses and a fake name. That is how I feel when a writer invokes a more famous work. The shortcut is apparent and, to me, indicates a shortcoming of the writer's skills. The exception to this is children's and young adult novels, where the shorthand makes sense for a less mature audience. Instead of invoking something else, writers should describe what we're seeing using their own words. Describe the fantasy setting, describe the spells being cast, make them your own. Yes, this does take more effort, but it raises up the story using the writer's own merits. Number 2, breaking the fourth wall. In almost every case, the story is hindered when a character exclaims, "Stuff like this only happens in movies," or gives a sarcastic response like, "Well, it's not like we're in a book." These shatter the novel's illusion and remind me that the story is only a story. So come up with a better way to convey a character's amazement. Look, if I suddenly gained magic powers or found myself trapped on an alien world, I guarantee my last thought would be, well, I saw this in a movie once. Instead, I would be babbling incoherently or possibly hiding in a corner curled up in a ball crying. Not proud of that, but that's how I envision it. Breaking the fourth wall is best done as a satire, particularly in more visual mediums like movies, TV, or graphic novels. When it comes to books, these moments tend to fall flat. The exceptions are when the story starts with somebody either reading or stating that they're telling a story, or at the very end of the story when somebody says they're going to chronicle the entire journey as a novel. This is the grandfather reading The Princess Bride to his grandson, or Bilbo going off on an adventure to come back and write there and back again. The first established itself at the beginning, and the second is the earned reward for having read The Hobbit to find out what happens to Bilbo. There also wasn't a fourth wall breaking moment during a pivotal scene that didn't result in a comedic moment or to show the grandson evolving across the story. Number 3, critical details as dreams. I have exceptionally vivid dreams that I use for inspiration, particularly when generating writing ideas. These dreams have never been prophetic or taught me something I didn't already know. Whenever I read a story where the plot is revealed through a dream sequence, I tend to think worse of the author. This makes me assume that they didn't take the time or effort needed to fully develop a character's motivations, or that they wrote themselves into a plot knot and didn't know how to carry the story forward. If you're considering giving a prophecy to a character or having a wish fulfillment moment during a dream sequence, my advice to you is don't. Authors who only ship characters during their dreams feel like they are catering to reader desires without dealing with the consequences for their characters, thus cheapening those moments. Or the author is trying to build up tension without doing anything to earn that built up tension. Number 4, overexplanation. When descriptions are told in excruciating detail, I reach a point where I start skimming pages at a time. Overexplanations don't challenge readers to use their critical thinking skills. This means exhaustive descriptions deprive readers of getting lost in their own imaginations thanks to the author's words. This sin also comes in the form of over-explaining the plot, or repeating the obvious to readers repeatedly so you don't miss that obvious repetition. Oops. Next week, I'm going to be starting my 3-part spoiler-free review of a trilogy I read, which was guilty of every one of these sins, but this one in particular. So come back next Monday to find out what I thought of Nevernight, Jay Kristoff's first novel in the Nevernight Chronicle. And lastly, number 5, cliches, cliches, cliches. When I first started writing, I wrote what I knew. Unfortunately, what I knew was a series of bad cliches. Yeah, I once started a story with a dream sequence to reveal nothing but major plot points and foreshadowing. Yeah, upon waking up, that character immediately went to the mirror to describe themselves. And yeah, there was a one-note bully whose sole purpose was to drive the characters and plot forward. I don't have an excuse for that. Later on, while beta reading, I was arrogant enough to call out another writer for having their villain eat an apple like a giant tool. And I legitimately thought I was so smart for having my own villain do the exact same thing because I was mocking the cliche. After a short discussion, my beta reader convinced me that I was wrong, and it didn't take much. So I scrapped that scene along with all those other cliche riddled chapters. For reference, I'm including a link in the description for a list of bad television tropes, along with another link for how to fix overused cliches. Cliches are there because they can work and make great shorthand to convey to readers what you're trying to describe. However, you as a writer need to do more with them. Don't just have a plucky upstart defeat a whole bunch of trained soldiers because of their plot armor. Instead, show that the soldiers were allowing themselves to be defeated so they could then follow the hero back to their hideout. And certain cliches should be entirely avoided, like giving a character amnesia so they seem more mysterious, and so that readers can learn their backstory in parts along with the character. Worst of all, never fridge characters, particularly a female character, as motivation for their male counterpart. As an added bonus to those 5 writing sins, here are 2 honorable mentions: extreme plot contrivances and inconsistent character motivations. There are far too many stories where the chances of the heroes and villains successfully accomplishing their plans, or honestly even meeting, are so astronomically small that it defies belief. That same disillusionment happens when characters actively work against their own motivations so the plot can work, or to have some dramatic confrontation mostly to recapture the reader's attention. Those were the greatest writing sins I've come across. Now, the important thing about writing sins is to recognize what they are and how to overcome them or avoid them altogether, because the chances of you being the exception to making them work is about as likely as winning the lottery. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. What are your least favorite writing sins? Have you ever come across a writing sin that was so jarring it made you put the book down? Do you agree with my opinions, or is everything I said wrong? Let me know in those comments below. To ensure that you don't commit your own writing sins, go ahead and press those like and subscribe buttons. I also post my running and writing thoughts on social media, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own comments. See you next time. Until then, find your own writing sins and scrub them from your novels.